Hello and welcome back to the Grimm Chronicles. I am Kathy Grimm, the Grimm Reader. Welcome back to my channel. This is my weekly reading chit-chat. And yes, I have quite a bit to talk about, not in terms of stuff finished, but just in terms of stuff. Let's start with the big one, my reading of the recognitions. So this week, it seems, even though I haven't really read them much, it was sort of seems like a rather social week in terms of the media, social media, for me at least. And so what happened with the recognitions, and just to tell you, I'm on page 3, almost 400. So I'm not even halfway yet, but we're moving towards the halfway mark. But so this week it was really interesting because I noticed at some point on my Twitter that I do spend too much time on, but because I like it. I know a lot of people don't like Twitter, but I have a good experience in it. And I think one of the reasons why I have a fairly good experience on it is that I do kind of, even though I'm not a scholar at all, I am part of, or I am, a lot of people I follow and who follow me are at academic Twitter. And academic Twitter is a little bit of a different place than regular old Twitter. So most of the academics I'm on there are fantastic and they're helpful and funny, and there's a little bit of a divide between anonymous, like academic accounts, and then most academics are just on there as who they are. But it's been a really interesting and fun place. You find out things, you find out about what people are doing. It's just worked out fairly well. Anyway, the point of all this talk about Twitter is that, so for me, what I would call a bigger booktuber, I mean, he has 30,000 subscribers, suddenly was following me, and I noticed that, because you notice that when for you a fairly famous booktuber follows you, and it's the book chemist, Mattia from Italy, but now residing, I think, in England. As far as I know, he's now also he's an academic too, recent PhD, I think. Anyway, so he followed me, and so I sort of tweeted how, oh, I'm such an honor, and then he sort of, I don't know what happened, but then I realized that I wasn't subscribed to him at the moment, but now I am again, because I really do love his stuff, and I do want to go back and look at some of his videos. But also, he had just recently posted a video about how he gave up on the recognitions, and so that was really, really interesting, because everything he says I kind of agree with. But I'm still getting, and purely in terms of the enjoyment of the reading experience, I am getting a lot out of it. But I really, I resonated a lot with, or I thought it was sort of funny how he was bringing up the hipster factor of the way some often younger men, or it is sort of gendered in a certain sense, are drawn to these difficult books. And he also posted a link, and I'll find it, the link to the article by Jonathan Ranson, who's part of this whole thing, I guess. He wrote an essay called Mr. Difficult that I haven't read yet, but about Gaddis. And so for the book chemist, at least, the book was just becoming too unenjoyable, and perhaps kind of like, he wasn't getting anything out of it, and he was getting a little bit sick of what he sees as the misanthropic moment, which is definitely in here. And he made this hilarious comment about how you can get the sort of vibe of what's going on in here if you go to any church in a small town in Italy on a Sunday and hear it from the pastor or the priest, which I thought was hilarious. And yeah, I don't know. But anyway, so it's just, on the one hand, I completely kind of see where he's coming from. And and it was so hilarious because right after I saw that video, that night, I had my first sort of, so it's the start of a new chapter, and we get into the mindset of the main person who, and it's true, I didn't even realize this, Gaddis has decided to name very rarely. We really get his name, and then he overnames the other characters. And so in this chapter right here, he's meeting his father, and his father, like there's on one page, they mention his name, Reverend Guyon, a lot, like 6, 7, 8 times, and you never get the name of the character, whose name I think is Wyatt. Pretty sure it's Wyatt. Anyway, so, but those first pages where we're inside Wyatt's head, I think his name is Wyatt. See, now I'm kind of doubting myself. I don't know if his father's name's, if that's his last name. Oh, I'm getting confused with the names, and that's not even my point. My point is, it turned into sort of Wakean, for lack of a better term, and by that I mean Finnegan Wakean prose that was really hard to deduce what is. The syntax is sort of fell apart because we're in his head and he's having all these. He's immersed in obscure religious texts and voices, and it's not just Christian. There's Egypt, and Lao Tse is mentioned at some point. Lao Tse's gestation, so the myth about Lao Tse. So it's all kind of mixed together in this almost nonsensical way. And yeah, I mean, I had kind of pulled down, because I was thinking, because the Machi's video is sort of about difficult books, and I had sort of thinking, well, for me, the ultimate difficult book is Finnegan's Wake, and I did pull it down from the shelves. And Bill's like, are you going to read Finnegan's Wake? I don't think I'll ever read Finnegan's Wake, because I don't think it's really readable. It's interesting as a specimen, but it doesn't make sense, and it's not really supposed to make sense. And so I was sort of looking through. You're kind of like a coder decoding. It's not really reading anymore. It's trying to figure out deducing meaning, which in a sense it reminds me a little bit of how I read poetry. I mean, you have to do that too, but poetry is just different. It's not Finnegan's Wake usually. Some of it is. Anyway, this whole discussion of difficult books is paired with this discussion of sort of hipster, or the ego is involved. And I guess in Mr. Difficult that I haven't read yet, there's an analogy to climbing a mountain, sort of the ego aspects of getting through these difficult books. Are you only reading it to say, oh, look at me, I was able to read this? And and I think even with me, that's part of it, but that wouldn't be enough. And there's plenty of books, including one of the ones I'm ashamed to say I've never read the Iliad, and that's probably, much more readable than a lot of other things. Or I gave up twice on Don Quixote. I actually would like to try that one again, maybe. I mean, it's so it's not really about if you're only reading to show off that you read it, what's the point? I mean, if that's your thing, I guess, whatever. It's not something that I can relate to that much. I mean, to a certain point, I will be proud when I finish this. Of course, I'm being silly because I'm reading this and Anna Karenina sort of at the same time, and that's a little bit. And I'm, have my job and everything, such as it is right now. So that's kind of, is that ego? I don't know. It's just me being silly. Anyway, so yeah, I thought that was the first sort of social fun thing that happened in terms of connecting with this not new, he's been around a lot, but reconnecting with this fairly, big booktuber, Maddie. So I'd like to hear if you read his comments and stuff like that. Moving on to, I watched some of the History Shelf. So Peg at the History Shelf's channel, kind of reconnected with that, watching it a little bit. And she had a book haul, and it was based on a sale at the University of Chicago. And it was a fascinating array of books. Alexander von Humboldt and some other people. And then also Hannah Arendt. And she's collecting books on Hannah Arendt and is all obsessed with Hannah Arendt. And her enthusiasm for it kind of sparked the same thing in me. And I really want to read more Hannah Arendt and become more, become more knowledgeable about her. And so what I did there is I pulled the only book I have of hers off my shelf, and I am going to read this. This is, I think what I might do, and maybe I'll even make a video, is do once I've finished with the big tomes, TBR. So this will be on that. Tree Grows in Brooklyn, which I had to set aside. Also the book that I was gifted by the Pastori Time. That'll be fun. I'm looking forward to that one, but I can't do it right now. And I know that in the back, there's even a TBR that I made about 25 books on my shelves that I'm going to read this year, which actually this was on there, I think. So I'm sort of doing that. I don't think Anna Karenina was on there, but see, that was my pick from the spin. So yeah, anyway. So I'm going to read Herr von Hagen, the biography. This is an early Arendt, apparently. And see, I'm interested in Raha van Hagen because back in the day when I did do research, I did a little bit of research. I did a lot of reading, lots of reading, and some articles on someone related to her a little bit, well, not related, just another woman, salonier in Berlin, Bettina von Arnim, the writer. 19th century Berlin women who had salons or were kind of connected to the salon world. I do love this cover, which is why I keep holding it up. Anyway, so I'm committed to reading this before by a lot of other Arendts, except aber in German we say but. So here's another social thing that happened was that I found out about a new biography that's being published, coming out very soon, by someone who I think I already followed on Twitter, Samantha Rose Hill, who is a wonderful Arendt scholar, got her PhD from UMass Amherst. So I know about UMass Amherst from my experience there, though she's much more recent. She's, of a different generation. And she's a wonderful website. She's an Arendt scholar. She teaches at all these different institutions, but she has this kind of, I get a feel of a public intellectual, who wants to sort of not just being in the ivory tower, which I think is sort of appropriate to someone like Arendt, who was very out there too as a public intellectual. And I found out that Rose Hill is the assistant director of this wonderful, the Hannah Arendt Center for Politics and Humanities, run out of Bard College, Bard. As I recall, Bard was in the news some years ago for getting rid of tenure, which was, of course, a little controversial. But anyway, that's beside the point. But the Hannah Arendt Center is a really cool place and very online. There's lots of videos, there's lots of talks, and Samantha also has a link to all of her talks. And like they've taped all of their group readings of certain texts of Arendt, and it's just so you can be completely a part of this world of Arendt, people who love Arendt and are reading her together. And then connected to that, something else happened that's sort of the intersection of Twitter and social and reading and thinking and being intellectual and all that stuff. I discovered Substack, which is a platform. Tell me if you know about it and who you subscribe to on Substack, where writers or anyone, journalists, academics, I assume other people can put up their writings, and then you can subscribe to them either free or you can have a paid subscription. And it was a little bit of a mistake because I was tired and didn't quite figure out how it's done. So I ended up, now I have to pay for 3 of them, but that's okay. I'm kind of okay with that 3. I'm glad it was only 3. So I've subscribed to the woman I think I've already mentioned previously, Samantha Rose Hill, who's the Hannah Arendt scholar. And she has a newsletter. She also did this cool invitation where she would take us into the archives and show us original texts, like, for example, by Walter Benjamin, which would have been really cool. I wasn't really up for it on that day, but so you sort of get insights into other things if you subscribe. And then the other 2 people I'm subscribed to is a German writer and academic. She wrote a book that I actually will also read when I have a chance to. I started it and didn't finish it. And her name is Berit Glanz. And she's German, but she has a sort of interest in Scandinavian stuff, and she lived in Iceland for a while too, and she's quite active on Twitter. That's how I know her. And I like her newsletter too. She has a whole article on the different aesthetics, like from a German academic sort of point of view, academia and and you can take a quiz. And she's really good. She's a good cultural commenter, so to speak. And then the third person is someone who it was a bit of a mistake, but I don't mind. I mean, he seems like, it's just that I've never read any of his books, and I hope I like them, but I think I will. He's this young historian from England, sort of has a bit of a reputation as being hipster or cool looking. He has a lot of tattoos, and he's the historian Dan Jones. So tell me if you've read any of his books. He has books on the Plantagenets, on the War of the Roses. He has a book on the Templars, so the Knights of the Templar. I'm kind of interested in that one. I'm interested in quite a few of them. He has a new book that's a history of the Middle Ages. He's very popular, and his books sell well, and I think he's on TV a lot. And I became interested in him at the same time as I became interested in a female historian of the same ilk, kind of quite public and doing a lot of TV shows. Susanna Lipscomb, I think. And they're also on all over the internets and interwebs. And so now I'm subscribed to his newsletter too, and I will get one of his books and read it. So yeah, those are the 3 Substacks that I'm paying for. And yeah, I'll stop there and hopefully connect this to the other parts where I talk about other things. Bye. I'm not going to talk a lot about Anna Karenina this week. It's going slowly. It is sort of in the back of the other books, but I'm still moving. I have read a little bit further. We went back to 11, and that part was a tiny bit. It was still interesting though. It's still good, and I will have thoughts on Anna Karenina. I mean, Tolstoy is, I love Tolstoy, so. So the last book I wanted to talk about, and I'm a little bit, I should have finished this. I'm almost finished, but I'm not quite finished before I had to make the video. So I didn't finish a book this week. Well, and actually there's this one, and let me just quickly say that I am still listening to Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erikson, and I am really enjoying it. It is overwhelming, and there's a lot going on, but in terms of listening to it, it's pulling me along, and the fact that I'm being overwhelmed with stuff, it's not pure telling me about how the world, it's just sort of you find out about the world because a lot of stuff is happening. And now so I liked How to Sail the Mage, and now a new character has emerged, and she's called Crone, and she's an old grand raven, or great raven, and they have all these special powers, and I love her, like this old curmudgeonly Lady Raven, great Raven is hilarious, and I love her. And so I like her. So yeah, it's interesting. And yeah, it's just still stuff is unfolding. People are getting, there's intrigue, there's murder, there's assassins, there's these warrens, so these places where wizards and mages do their thing in terms of magic. And it's good. I like it. And when I have more time, I'll do more sort of watching of the videos. I don't think I'll watch a lot of the Malazan tube, but I will, Philip Chase, the professor that I mentioned the other time, I like his, I'm going to look at he has a recent video where he lists his top fantasy series. Man, that's a lot of words right there, if you read all of those. But yeah, no, for escapism, I think it's good. And then the last book that I should have finished but didn't is the graphic novel. Not my first, but I have read very few graphic novels, and I really like it. I really can see why people are excited about this, and I really do think it has sort of something Berlin-esque about it. And I have the drawings and the way that how you read a graphic novel or comic is different from how you read a book. Of course, you have to align the visual stuff with the words, and he does things with fonts. So when one of the main characters is typing, you have the type font, and then as someone who's not used to reading comics, you have to understand when there's bubbles, that's a thought bubble. That whole thing, I mean, for you guys this is like basic. For me it's like, oh, that's what they're thinking. And also sometimes I can't think of a good example right now. You see kind of glimpses of what someone is thinking without words, just in the way he's drawn the faces. It's very subtle, and I think it's kind of touching. There's this one set of panels where this one woman who was kind of in love or had a crush on this other woman, and the other woman just told her about the affair she's having, and she's like all upset and sad, and it's just like, I think there's like, she made a bust of her, like, and then she throws it away. It's kind of sad. No, it draws you in. I like how sometimes he'll have a picture where it's just in shadow, just to sort of show emotion. I don't know, this is where they finally get together. It's quite well done, and it's quite endearing and emotional. So, and I think they are sort of quicker reads because there's less text, but good, quite good. And I've already ordered number 2, and I'm going to read it. So thank you for suggesting it to me, and I would like to at some point collect some other nice graphic novels. I know Doris, whenever she shows us the ones she's reading, I'm always like, I want to read that. And I saw on the back of Britta's bookshelf Red Rosa, and Rosa Luxemburg is someone I'm interested in too, I guess, and this like Mouse, I have to read. I've never read Mouse. And so at the end here, I'm sort of thinking about how I don't want to get into the weeds with the fact that there was a little bit of tension on a video, and it had to do with people, the whole idea of do we diversify your reading, that whole big issue that of course, you see what I read, it's not diverse, and yet that's what I read, and so what do you do about that, or how do you address that, and that whole thing, and do we read to be educated, or do we read to enlarge our hearts? And I just have all these thoughts about it in my head, but they're not really confrontational in that sense. I don't want to be confrontational. On the other hand, I sort of feel, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm misreading this, I sort of feel, I hope it's sort of it's just a family feud, or that there's enough largesse there to it not be too what's the word, controversial. On the other hand, I think we'll have to just be, people are people, and people will say what they want to say, and maybe in ways that we're not always that on board with, and maybe sometimes we just disagree. I don't know, I'm probably not making sense, but one thing I was thinking about is this idea of education and reading, and I was thinking how there's this German word Bildung, which basically means education. You may have heard it in the concept of a Bildungsroman, these picturesque novels with one protagonist. But this concept of Bildung kind of encompasses the sort of enlarging of the heart and actual factual knowledge gaining. So it's a sort of a holistic approach to that. And I guess from my perspective, I'm older, and I'm set in my ways, and I'm of the ilk of we all should read what we want to read, however diverse or not diverse, or for whatever reasons, let's put it that way. But on the other hand, I'm an academic, and I'm interested in sort of non-mainstream stuff to a certain extent. But for me, it's more like, I was thinking about how a lot of my wanting to find out about the world happens not in books, it happens through articles, or through, NPR had a terrible short article, reporter talking about what's happening in Mozambique, and so I go and find out a little bit more about that. So just sort of journalism helps me find out more about what's going on in the world, and also how to feel about certain things too. And so it doesn't always have to happen through the fiction that I'm reading, for me at least. And then even with the fiction, Hannah Arendt is a political theorist, a political theory and philosophy, Rosa Luxemburg, and other people, and even more or less sort of canonical people online through Twitter, who are basically having these discussions about, political issues and Black Lives Matter and diversification, and how to live, if we're done with capitalism, what are we going to do? Or, moving on from, how do we address fascistic stuff and all of that good stuff. Anyway, I'm not sure I'm making a lot of sense here, but I am very appreciative of everything on BookTube and everyone on BookTube, and I just wanted to get that out there. I haven't made any comments on anything, but I think it's all good, and even if we don't always agree, that's okay. I know that's kind of like a bland statement, but that's how I feel. I'm an INFJ. I'm not very confrontational, but I'm also set in my ways, and and I can understand when people get sort of, even if wrongly, get riled up when they think someone is telling them that what they're reading is not what they should be reading, because we're all allowed to read what we want to read, or not read what we want to read. But on the other hand, maybe being reflective about why we're doing certain things is not a bad idea as well. Anyway, I think I'll let it go. I hope they can put this together and it won't be too long. And I hope everyone is doing well. I hope people are not getting too snowed under over there in Colorado. And please comment. I know sometimes it's hard to comment on my videos because I'm reading all these weird things. But just say hi. That's fine too. And I will talk to you very soon. Bye-bye and thank you for watching.